Very, very stellar individual. So he made JavaScript in about 10 days. So the time that it took you to build your mod 1 and mod 2 project, he was like, cool, I'm gonna just create this language. And it was like, awesome. The problem is this language wasn't exactly popular in its initial conception, like most things are, right? Like, hey, I just built this brand new mod 2 app, and how many users do you have on your app right now? That's right, 1, like you, right? And you're like, oh my God, this app is great. Nobody else is using it. And so the same thing happened with JavaScript. A little bit of what we kind of talked about. I'm just going to blow them up so you can read these words. A little bit of a background as to why JavaScript became popular was this idea that like email came out, and email became really popular. So I don't know how old a lot of you are, but there was a time in your life where you had to like refresh your email browser all the time, or like you got mail. Does that sound familiar at all? Yes? No? Okay. All right. Some of the older folks in here recognize the struggle of 1,000 free hours coming on a CD. But yes, and the idea is that refreshing was not a great user experience. So there had to be some sort of way where they can send these network requests where it didn't have to refresh the entire page. So like before I kind of get into that, let's review this like request response cycle. I'm on the browser and I do some sort of action, right? Maybe like a click action or a scroll action, or I submit a form, something like that, and that sends a request back to the server. So the idea is that like you have your form 4, and you're like, cool, I want to create this animal. And you hit submit after you type in all the data, and it sends that post request back over to the server, so your Rails backend. And then there's 2 things that happen inside the controller, right? You need some sort of data from the model, potentially, animal.all for your index, animal.find for your show, and then it hits a server, like your database. That database will come back with like, here are all the animals, bless up, active record, and then it sends back a response over the internet, like this cloud-like object for whatever reason. So the internet sends back a response, which is that HTML file with all of the instances from your database that's transmuted into HTML. Right? So now you have like a p tag or li tag for each of the animals, .name, .species, .whatever. Right? And so that's basically what's happening. The problem is it sends back everything every single time. And so now we live in like this beautiful age of like cell phones and like speed. And so what you don't want to do is you don't want to send back a lot of data. You want to send back only the data that you need. So for example, if I were to go to Twitter for the first time, right? What loads on this page? You have like the nav bar, little home button action. You have this like a login account. You have a sign up. So let's see that all happen, right? You see the whole page refresh. Everything loads. If you open up what is known as like the developer tool, so you can hit either Command Option J or Command Option I, you can take a look at this network tab. And if I were to hit refresh, you can see it winds up downloading all of these files here. Every single one of these files is necessary to render this page. So you have some HTML, right? And then you have like this image. I have to go get this image. I have to fetch this image from somewhere, right? I have to fetch all of these images from somewhere. I have to fetch these icons from somewhere. I have to fetch the style sheet. I have to get all of this data. Now, if I wanted to just show more tweets, should I have to re-download the HTML for the nav bar? No. Should I have to re-download how many tweets this person has, which is like an insane amount. This person's very popular. Oh my God, 106,000 followers? Oh my God, it's more popular than me. I have 4. So right after this, I'm going to be a social media celebrity. No big deal. Huh?
He's not verified.
Wow. It's keeping it low profile. So the idea is that, do I need to go to the database and grab this data again? Should I have to? All I really want is like, hey, what are the next 10 tweets? And if you notice real quick on this side here, as I scroll, it makes just 2 more requests, right? Probably for some more tweets and then maybe some like additional metadata, like an image tag in case there's like a picture inside the 10 tweets. But if I refresh, I have to download every single thing again. And so JavaScript became popular because it allowed the browser, like the client, to make these requests on the side. So for example, instead of clicking and submitting the form, what if on scroll and I hit the bottom of the page, it fires off a silent request in the background, and then it hits the server, gets just the 10 tweets, select star from Twitter, like the tweets account, the table, and then sends back and just limit 10. And then it sends it back through the internet, and then while the page is still up, I do something with each of these tweets and I put it on the website. And that's basically what JavaScript is doing, like in a nutshell. And so the idea here is that a long time ago, like email came out. And so instead of like refreshing all the time, we wanted to send these requests always to your email box to see like, hey, did you get a new email? If you did, slap it onto your like inbox, and so that you could see that you got a new email instead of like always refreshing. And so that's really when it became popular. Right now, like these first few lectures are like just very informational, and so they'll be more fun later, I promise. Right? Like, me just talking to you like this is not super fun. But are there any questions? Okay, you can all put your hands down. There's too many questions here. No big deal. All right. So check it out. A long time ago, right, there was something called the browser wars. So who remembers like this right here? Remember this? Oh my God, young crowd. Ugh. So a long time ago, the internet used to look like this, and they used to say really smart things like surfing the web. Like, oh man, you want to surf the web? Like, I don't even know what that means. But they used to say that. And so there were a lot of browsers back in the day, right? There was like a NetZero browser, right? Do you remember BlackBerry? You guys are around for that age? I mean, you guys weren't born yesterday, right? BlackBerry was still a thing. So there was a BlackBerry browser, right? You had Opera, Dolphin, you had Internet Explorer, right? Those are the days, right? And so the idea here is that your JavaScript, if I want to like make this request and then like add it to the page, there's a certain way I'd write it. I'd be like function, blah, 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 blah. The problem is each browser ran your JavaScript just slightly differently. So imagine being on a website and be like, oh my God, this thing works perfect in Chrome. And then opening it on Mozilla Firefox and be like, why doesn't this page load? How come there's no image here? And so back in the day, there used to be something called, oh my God, best viewed in Netscape. You ever seen this picture over here? Oh my God. Let's take a look. This right here? Yeah. This site is best viewed with Netscape Navigator. Please download Netscape now. Does this seem familiar at all? All right. So here's what actually happened. The idea was that Netscape Navigator would run your JavaScript so that it would add a certain level of functionality versus when like Internet Explorer would open up and run your JavaScript and attempt to run that same level of functionality, but it didn't know what to do. So imagine in Ruby you wrote, all right, cool, I'm going to dot map over this array, and it's going to do this transformation. And so in Internet Explorer, it'd be like, great, I just want you to +1 that bad boy. No big deal. And then in Netscape Navigator, for whatever reason, it didn't +1 it. It just didn't run that JavaScript. It didn't know how to do this dot map. And so it just wouldn't run. And so you'd be like refreshing the page on Internet Explorer, and none of the numbers would be going up. But in Netscape, the numbers would be going up. And so this was not a good user experience, right? Like 1-star user experience. It's no bueno. And so the idea is that eventually at some point, right, this ECMA, the European Computer Manufacturer Association, all these smart people came together and they formed this council. And they were like, all right, we need to standardize how JavaScript runs so that every single browser runs JavaScript in the same way so that I can have a consistent user experience. And so that sort of ended the original browser wars where it was like, hey, please use me because I run JavaScript better. And then the other people would be like, no, use me, my JavaScript's better. I'm like, eh. And so they're like, no, everyone's going to do JavaScript the exact same way. And so ECMA was formed, and then the first modern standardized JavaScript came out, which is called ECMAScript, ECMA script. And that is like, you can call it ECMAScript ES 2015 or ES6, Harmony JavaScript, it's all the same thing. And so that's kind of like what that word means. Now it's been standardized, and now I'm going to build features on top of it. So anytime I have a new thing in JavaScript, I'm going to create a new version of ECMAScript. So right now we're on like ES8, and I think there's a proposal out for ES9. And so that's how the JavaScript language is evolving. Cool? So smart. All right. So also, like, it was written in like 10 days, so JavaScript's kind of weird. And we're going to talk about like a lot of the differences between Ruby and JavaScript. It'll be fun. Boop, boop, boop. So what you know right now in terms of like this request response cycle is that the response that comes back is always HTML, right? You render some sort of like ERB file, which is basically HTML, right? Embedded Ruby in HTML. The idea is that you can send back more than that. You can send back text files, you can send back images, and you can send back something called JSON. You guys talk about JSON in Mod 1 and Mod 2? So what is JSON? Oh my God, yeah. Usually people forget what it stands for. It's like, oh, JSON, yeah, I got that. Yeah, JavaScript Object Notation. So what is that, though?
It's like a version of JavaScript where everything is an object or it's a value grid.
Yes.
Like a watered down version of JavaScript.
You're correct in what you're trying to say. And that is, it's just key value pairs, right? It's not like a watered down version of JavaScript, as much as I needed a language agnostic data structure that was key value pairs. So if you're writing Java or C or Python, I think they're called dictionaries, right? It's just a key value pair. In Ruby, they're called hashes. In JavaScript, we're just going to call them objects. It's just the curly brackets, right? You got the old curly boys, and you're like, oh, look, an object, like object, right? Bloop. And then you do this with a key pointing to a particular value. I spelled that wrong, right? So JSON is language agnostic, meaning if I'm sending data over the internet, I should not care what language you're writing in. The data should be the same, right? So if I'm writing like Python, I'm doing some smart data science stuff, I can grab JSON. It'll be exactly the same as if I'm writing a script in JavaScript or Ruby, and I just translate that JSON into a Ruby hash or into a JavaScript object or into a Python dictionary. And that's all that is. So don't be scared about what that is. Cool? All right. Boop, boop, boop. I mean, there's like some really cool stuff in here. Like all these readmes in Mod 3 are pretty thorough, so if you want to like troll through them, there's a lot of juicy information. But let's actually just dive into the meat of this lecture, right? So there are 7 different data types in JavaScript. We're not going to really talk about symbols too much, but symbols exist in the same way that symbols exist in like Ruby. So like right here, this is a symbol versus if this key was a string. Cool. Pointing to like a value. That's all. They have like different properties to them, but we won't really dive too much into them. All right. So what is undefined? Some of you guys that did like the pre-work. Some of you watched this lecture. What is undefined? Yes, right? Like right now, undefined just means that there's no assigned value that you have assigned. So before we actually like start testing this and I show you all this stuff, let's see how JavaScript actually runs. In your HTML, let me blow this up for you. Is that more better? More better? Thumbs up, thumbs down. I can see it, I can't see it, for sure. All right, so check it out. Look at this script tag that's here. This is where the JavaScript comes in. What I'm saying is I'm pulling in a file called index.js. And so index.js is right here. I have all of this JavaScript that I've written, all these like hundreds of lines of code, like very sexy. And then I'm pulling it in right here so that in my browser, I can render this HTML and then I can run the JavaScript. So the browser is running my JavaScript. So I would need to, in fact, then, if I were to do this, take a look and see, there's my index.html. I can open index.html. And now I'm in this file. And you should see it match, right? Intro.js, open your Chrome console and run some JavaScript. Great. If I look here, I have an h1 and a p tag that says exactly what it's supposed to be. So far, so good. All right, so if I were to run this, I should see 3 console logs. Console log is essentially what in Ruby? Like your puts, right? So in order to see it, if I just open up the console, I'll see all my console logs, my puts. The cool thing is you can color code them, and so they're super fun. And so if you're like console logging a million things, you can see all the differences. Cool? Look at this like Christmas tree over here. Sweet. So in Ruby, if I were to just do something like 1 equals to 1, what happens?
Undefined. Something gets an error.
Will it though? In Ruby, in Ruby. Oh, in Ruby. Oh, So what's happening here? Yeah, I'm declaring this global variable 1, and I'm assigning it to the value of 1. So if I were to do that, I should be able to log, oh no, I forgot to change my thing. Okay, if I log 1, I should see just 1 there. Cool. And so that's really kind of it. That's how JavaScript is running. That's how your browser is running your JavaScript. It's just pulling it in from the HTML file. Are there any questions on that? That's kind of like a thing that gets people a lot for some reason. Okay, great.
Question, would you have to declare it as like a let or const or anything, or does it just default to?
I'm gonna get to that. It's kind of gross. There's like a whole thing about var, let, and const. All right, so let's just kind of keep going. So the idea here is that undefined. Let's take a look. I have 1, right? What if I did 2? What is 2 right now? If I want, I'll do var with G. What is var 2? If I do var 2, I am declaring that there is going to be a variable called 2. I am not assigning it any real value yet. So if I were to do that, what is the value of 2? Undefined. There's no value associated with it, but that variable exists in memory. So did I ever declare a variable called 3? What if about a variable called yeet? Eats for cheats. It'll tell me that, hey, this variable's never been defined. You've never declared it. So undefined just means that there is in memory a variable that exists, but it has no assigned value. Cool? What about null? What's null? Oh, yeah, you guys can just start yelling, but if this class gets unruly, then we'll go back to hands. But it's just so much easier if you guys just like throw it out there.
What if intentionally left blank it's like nil?
It's exactly like nil, right? So what's the difference between null and undefined? Correct. So the idea is that undefined, meaning that JavaScript had said, hey, you declared this variable, so I'm going to point it to a value of undefined because you have not defined it. But if you specifically want a variable to be nothing, then you write null. Why would that be useful? Yeah, the idea here is that I can be using these variables, and if I don't assign a value to it, and I'm a developer, and I notice that these values are coming up as undefined, it's the first thing I'm going to look at and be like, okay, there's something wrong here. But if I'm looking at a bunch of variables in the iteration or something, and something comes back as null, that should not throw my radar off, because null says that the developer specifically wanted this to be null. If it comes back as undefined, it's saying that JavaScript doesn't know what it is. That means that you probably never defined it. So there's like an important distinction there. So if you see null, you're like, cool, that was on purpose. If I see undefined, I'm gonna be like, that's suspect. I'm gonna like dig in. Cool? And that's one of like the reasons. Great. What's a Boolean? Right. Just true, false. Oof. Same as Ruby, right? Super easy. What about number? Okay. Yes. So in Ruby, we have like integer, decimal, we have like float, we have all these like different subclasses for like numbers. In JavaScript, everything's just a number. Cool. Like 1, 1.1, 0.1, just number. Super easy. All right, string is string, and we're going to come and talk about like the one weird difference. And then the last data type is just object, and we're going to dive into that because that one gets real dicey. And this is the first time you'll see that JavaScript is freaking weird. Cool? All right, so there's something called primitives. Primitives are passed by value. And so this is what that means, right? If I were to simply do, what is 2, right? It's nothing. If I do var2, or I just do 2, and I reassign it to be the number 2, and then I say 2 again, var 2 again, is equal to the variable 2. So far, so good. What is the value of 2 again? It's just 2. If I do 2 again, plus 1, plus equals to 1, or plus plus. You seen plus plus? Cool. What happens to 2 again? It just increases by 1. So if I look at 2 again, I should see. Yes. Help me out. This is easy math. Oh my God. Oh, you said they were strong. So what is a value? Yeah.
My question was why the return value needed 2 again plus plus.
Got it.
I'm just curious why it's returning the original value first.
What a beautiful question. So the question is, if I do plus plus, why is the return value still 2? So the idea is that plus plus actually returns the original value and then evaluates and adds 1 to it. If I do plus plus 2 again, it'll add 1 to this and then return 3. So there was like a small nuance there, but good question. Nobody asked like, wow, this class is strong. Oh my God. Great. So I see 2 again is the value of 3, right? So what is the value of the variable 2? Right. So it's passed by value, meaning each individual variable will hold its own value and that they do not sort of interact with each other. Right? It looks like a Ruby, right? The idea is that it's basically the same so far in your mind. So there should be no questions on this pass by value. Right? Like the variable holds a specific value on its own. That'll make more sense later. Trust me. So the only weird thing about strings is how did you do interpolation in Ruby? Yeah, you did something weird like here's like a string. I needed the double quotes, not the single quotes. And then I did the little hashtag and just put like Ruby variable with that snake case, right? And then this would do the string interpolation, right? And then you can also add some string here. And so that's basically what it would look like, right? In JavaScript, you have these backticks, and that just means like string interpolation. So if I have backtick, and then I simply go, wow, look at this number. And then I have a $sign pointing to 2 again. So that $, that straight money, is how you do interpolation with the backticks. Cool? Yo, it's so money. Any questions on the difference? Yeah, these lectures are boring, I'm sorry. But this is just kind of straightforward. Thank you for laughing at that. Yeah, it's rough. It's rough. So you have -1, you have your exponents, you have all your floats, and then you have a very interesting thing called not a number. So what is not a number? Yeah, anything that's not a number, right? So like what is the value of like B49K? Like, that's not a number, and I can't convert that into an integer. So it's super easy. If I want to convert something into an integer, I do parse int, which makes a lot of sense. I'm going to parse this integer, take the string 1, 2, 3, and make a number from it. So the string 1, 2, 3 naturally should just be the number 1, 2, 3. What about 1, 2, 3 ABC? Or ABC 1, 2, 3, right? ABBA. So 1, 2, 3 happens. So here's the weird thing about JavaScript. It will actually attempt to iterate through, and the second it gets to something that's not a number, it will just freeze. In the same way that if I were to do OK here, the first thing it sees is this letter O. And it's like, that's not a number, dog. And then it will break and stop and just return, hey, that's not a number. Cool? So JavaScript's really weird. You can always check stuff with this like type of. And so like, what is the type of this string? OK. Or beef. Or Charles Entertainment Cheese. That's like his real name. Charles Russo over there. It's Charles Entertainment Cheese. He used to dress up like a rat and run an arcade and then became a developer. So this is a string. All right. So what what if I put 10 in here? What should I get? All right, I should get number. But what if I put not a number in here? What do you think the type of not a number is? Yes. So not a number is in fact a number. JavaScript is powerful. I know, immediately. All right, cool, Boolean. So here's the one weird thing about Booleans, and that is false is false. Thank God. 0 is false. Empty string is false. Null is false. Undefined is false. And not number is false. So what's falsy in Ruby? False and nil. That's it. So the list is just slightly bigger inside JavaScript. That's all. Cool. I won't tell you to memorize a lot of things. I really won't. This is one of the few things you just have to memorize, only because it is different and it's weird. Cool. You don't have to like take. I'm gonna push this code up for you if you want. All right. Cool. All right. So non-primitive. So everything else in this list is a primitive. The only thing that's not a primitive is an object. So objects are passed by reference, not passed by value. This is the first time it's going to get really dicey. Who here knows what passed by reference means? Are you familiar with it? You're familiar? You watch this? Cool. Anyone else? Familiar with it? So you want to give me an example or?
Sure. Okay.
Cool.
So basically, if you're invoking a variable inside a variable.
Okay.
Yeah, basically like, look, I can give the example, right?
Sure.
So,
All right. Why don't I just? I can do the example. It's okay. All right. So we have like a variable, right? And it's like an object. So we can have food, and it's just going to be an object with a key of pizza pointing to the value of hut. Cool. No big deal. Yeah. So if I were to do variable like food again, and I say, hey, it's going to be assigned the value of food. So what is food again? It's just a key of pizza pointing to hut. So if I want to add a key to this, right? So like food again, and I were to be like, what is, I don't know. What's another key for food, right? Taco, pointing to the value of bell. Do you guys not eat dirty, nasty, cheap food? You guys are like, oh my God, dig in or bust. Okay. So what is the value of food again? Great. What's the value of food? Why? Right, so here's what's happening, right? Here, let me draw this. Oop. Okay, you ready for this fantastic artiste? All right, so check it out. Ready? I created a variable, food, right? Food. All right, I have a touchpad, all right? It's a little tough. And I say that, hey, there is a object in memory, right, that's P pointing to the value of hut. When I said food is equal to food, again, I'm just going to put A. Right, I'm using a touchpad, all right? You're a bully. And I assign these to be the same thing. What I really said was, somewhere in memory, right? This is what memory looks like. X 0 4 3 2 9. Right? Like you remember the Ruby thing? Like there's like a weird thing. Somewhere in memory there's this object. When I did this assignment operator, really what I said was food and food again needs to point to the same object in memory. So if I mutate food A and I look at food again, it's pointing to the same object in memory. So anything I do to food A, food will also change and mutate because it's pointing to the same place. So I have this thing in memory, right? And it's pointing to a variable food. And then I say, hey, this other variable is also pointing to this object. If I change this, it mutates this in memory. So when I have the original pointer, right, it's also going to be mutated. So that's passed by reference. They're referencing the same thing in memory. Cool? I know, JavaScript's a little dicey. All right? So, object literals. Yeah?
Wait, real quick. So if
Sure.
you were to make that instead of describing the variable if you made it a constant, would that raise an error if you tried to do what you just did with the Taco Bell?
No, but literally this afternoon I'm going to talk about all the difference between var, let, and const, and why after today I'm probably never going to use var again. Cool? But to answer your question, no, it won't break. Look, oh my God, look, const is right here. Powerful. Yeah.
So this is just objects like a hash.
Yes, exactly. Remember, oops, that's not it. They're just key value pairs. Key of pizza pointing to a value of hut in the same way a hash would.
Arrays also has that.
Yes. So the idea is that inside object, right, we have object literals. We've talked about them right now. And that is, I'm literally just going to make a brand new object here, as opposed to doing this old school, like in Ruby, you did something like this, right? Array.new. And then like you can pass it in arguments and it would just make a brand new array. You can do the same thing in JavaScript. You can do object.new and then, okay, I'm sorry, new object. And it would just, yeah, sorry. I was just teaching mod 1 earlier. It would just make a brand new like key value pair. Except I can just also do a object literal and just get the same thing. I'm literally going to make this brand new object out of thin air without that sort of new syntax. Cool? All right. So the other thing is, I have it down here. Yeah, I should probably move that up. So the idea is that when I talked about all of this, right, these data types, we didn't talk about arrays. And so an array is actually a type of object. And you can prove this by simply just going, what is the type of? And then you can pass in an array. It's an object. So arrays are also passed by reference and not passed by value. Cool. The other thing that's really bizarre about JavaScript is that objects are non-primitives and functions are basically just objects. So if I have a function like I like pancakes, right? Let's take a look. It's the same like in Ruby. If I were to do like def like pancakes, and then I would just do like end, right? And I put a little puts here, like print if I wanted to, eat. That's basically it, right? So in JavaScript, this exact thing, oops, is just this function keyword. So let's actually write that here. I can have a function, right? What's like your favorite food? Nice. I love pancakes. So the weird thing about JavaScript is they're not snake cased. It's all camel cased. It starts with this lowercase, and then every word after that that you want in this needs to start with a capital letter, and that's how it indicates the differences. Cool? So I love pancakes, and you have to put the parentheses all the time. So this will be a habit that you'll like get used to, even if it takes no arguments. Ruby's been very good to you. That's all syntactical sugar. So then it starts with this sort of curly bracket. And that's basically the exact same thing as def method, boop, boop, and then end. If this was like Ruby, you can choose not to put it on if you don't want to. Syntactical sugar, it's magic. You can also invoke a bunch of Ruby methods without the parentheses, but we'll get to that later. So you can just console log, right? Or just return. You guys forget your returns yet? Ruby has what is known as implicit returns, and JavaScript does not. It does, but it doesn't. You have to put return here, otherwise it'll give you back nothing. So just put, does anyone like them? Pancakes? They are like crepes, but bigger. America. Cool? So if I refresh, right, remember it loads my JavaScript, so I should have this code available to me. So what is I love pancakes? Why did I get this back when I put I love pancakes? I'm simply asking for the reference to the function. I'm not asking the function to execute. I'm getting a reference to it. So if I want this to execute, how do I do it? That's right, you got to put the bananas in there. And so there's a difference between what is known as this function definition and this function invocation. So here, I'm just asking for the definition of the function. I'm asking for a reference to this function. Here, I'm actually invoking this function. This will cause you a problem for like one day as you transfer from Ruby to JavaScript, and then you'll probably never make that mistake again. So don't like stress it. What you will do though is when you write Ruby is you'll actually put the parentheses, and you're like, oh, I don't have to do that. Yeah, it's interesting. So I was teaching mod 1 and mod 3 last go around. All sorts of wild mistakes. The students were like, do you even know JavaScript? I'm like, I promise I do. Cool. Right. So functions are in fact objects. So what that means is if I put I love pancakes, I can add key values to this. So if I were to put IHOP is the International House of Gains, right? Then I can have a reference to this. If I were to put I love pancakes, again, it's just that function definition, and I say what are the keys associated with this function, which is in fact an object, and I say what is IHOP, and it'll give me back this string. If I ask for a key that does not exist on it, right, like, I don't know, Waffle House, oops, it's undefined. There's no key associated with this object of Waffle House. If I want to look at all the key value pairs and all the properties of something, remember console.log, I'm invoking a method called log on console, the object. If I do something like console.dir, it's going to give me all the properties of the particular object. So if I put I love pancakes, it's going to give me all the properties. It's in fact a function. If I take a look at it, it has a key of IHOP pointing to a particular string, and then you can see here the arguments are null because it's not taking any arguments. This is the name of it, and then there's other things that we will get into like much later on in Mod 3. Something about prototypes and constructors. It gets dicey, but it's going to be okay. So functions are objects, objects are objects, arrays are objects, and they're all passed by reference. All right, cool. Poop, poop, poop. Oh man, look at this. All right, the last thing I kind of want to talk to you about, because I could tell like it's hitting that mark where you're getting kind of sleepy, and this lecture is very, very interesting, very engaging, very interactive. So here's the thing about like labs. All right, in Mod 2, it was make it work. The idea is that if it worked in the browser, you were good to go. Is this like distracting you? All right, I'll leave some memes on. So you want to see it one more time? Look at this. All right, very good. So the idea is that when you were back in Mod 1, the tests were important because you were checking against the language. In Mod 2, it wasn't as important because it's a framework. You're trying to test behavior, and testing for behavior becomes really tricky because the code has to be written a certain way so that the tests can go through a particular route for behavior, right? Like, hey, if I submit a form, it should create an object. That's behavior. And so BDD, which is behavior-driven development, it's a little bit more difficult to test. It's not important that we made you pass those tests because we just wanted to see if you can build the feature. In Mod 3, though, we're going, again, back to the core language. Can you write in each method that goes through everything in an object? Can you do this in JavaScript? Again, we're going back to TDD, test-driven development. And so those tests become more important again. So I know that there was this weird shift in Mod 2, but Mod 3, please try to pass all the tests in the labs. If you have problems with them, Matt, Charlie, and I would be happy to help you. Are there any questions as to like just the intro, the basic JavaScript, and like the philosophy, the thought process behind Mod 3, passing the tests? How are you feeling? All right? Trust me, we're going to have a lot of fun. All right? I just got to get through today. All right, let's look at some memes. Look at this. History of JavaScript, right, blah, blah, blah. Oh, that's not a meme. I deleted all of them because I would scroll through them, and the last couple classes didn't think they were very funny. So